Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day, your one-stop shop for all things college football, NFL draft, and NFL talk. Nick Durst here by my side. I'm Michael Rochman. We are here for a great weekend of college football, great weekend of some NFL play as well. Send in your comments, send in your questions. We'll be sure to get to them. We love all the fan interaction. We want to thank everyone that's tuning in today, and we want to thank everyone that's tuned in the past. And thanks to LandryFootball.com for the platform to speak on. But first and foremost, before we dive into everything today, Nick Durst, how you doing?
Doing well, Michael. Headed towards the weekend here, so never mind a Friday show. It's always a good way to start the weekend with some football talk. And again, we got a lot of crazy games this weekend. And last weekend in college football, the big game with the result really was the fact that Purdue beats Iowa. Iowa done when it comes to college football playoff. And then after that, I don't like it, but Alabama already snuck back into the top four.
Yeah, the chaos that's going on in college football has really resulted in a little bit of a wacky ranking. You wouldn't generally see a team like Cincinnati that isn't in a Power 5 conference get that respect when it comes to the top 25, but they've earned it. They put together a very solid year. They've beat teams that they've had to beat. And with the other teams just kind of not handling their business, Oklahoma kind of struggling. Alabama lost. Ohio State had a loss. There were some other schools as well. Oregon, Iowa just lost last week. Really, it's just opened the door for Cincinnati. And, speaking of major losses, Coastal Carolina upset by Appalachian State last night in what was devastating. We talked about them last episode as a team that could potentially continue to work their way up, maybe not into that playoff picture, but just into that top 10 type of range as a G5 school. Obviously had a tremendous season last year. This year was kind of hoping to build on that. They are still having a great season, but tough loss for them last night to Appalachian State.
Yeah, certainly. No doubt about that. Listen, Oklahoma State, they're putting themselves in a great position here where if they beat Oklahoma, which is possible, I think, and they win the Big 12 here, I think Oklahoma State is going to get into the college football playoff. Obviously, if Oklahoma goes undefeated, they'll be in the college football playoff. What do you see playing out there? I don't think that a one-loss Big 12 winner is going to get into the college football playoff. I think it's going to be tough, but I guess we got to see how everything plays out in the Big 10.
Yeah, we're at a point where it's so early that a team that's maybe ranked 9 right now is still very much in control of their own destiny. The Big 10 has the 4 teams that are 5 through 8, and then Oklahoma's in that top 4. So Oklahoma State right now undefeated. If they are able to finish out this season, go on and beat Oklahoma, the rest of the Big 10 is going to take care of themselves. And really that's going to leave a spot for both Oklahoma and that Big 10 champion to get in. There's still talk about what's going to happen if, let's say, Alabama goes and beats Georgia in the conference championship, and then both teams have one loss since he's undefeated. And then, what happens if it's, let's say, 11-1 Ohio State with Big 10 championship, they go 12-1, and an undefeated Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State would get that nod just because Ohio State hasn't necessarily proven it yet, but it's going to be very interesting. Personally, though, I do think Oklahoma's still the clear favorite. With Caleb Williams in at QB, they seem to have really kind of unlocked their offense. Their defense is still playing a little bit below expectations, but there's still plenty of talent there. I think they'll kind of get it going and really kind of finish out this year strong, win the Big 12, and probably end up in playoffs. Whether that results in anything much more than that, we'll see.
Yeah, and with the Big 10, Michigan can't, be looking too far ahead here because they got Northwestern's going to play them tough or, at least put up a fight. Because next weekend, Mike, Michigan versus Michigan State at Michigan State, Saturday, October 30th, could very well be looking at the Big 10, the Big 10 winner coming out of that game. Whoever wins that one, it's going to be a huge game next week.
Yeah, there are plenty of Big 10 competitors. Really, though, like you said, there's a few that kind of haven't come down to it. Iowa, I think, is still in the picture, but that loss is tough to overcome. Michigan State, the day before Halloween is going to be extremely fun. Ohio State, always going to be in it, even with one loss. I think they very much can compete. They play Penn State the day before Halloween, so big weekend that October 30th is going to be absolutely crucial to kind of getting some clarity in the Big Ten, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you mentioned Rattler. So here's Hud the Stud. He says Rattler is so bad. Michael's consensus #1 pick for the 2022 draft. He's glad Williams is playing better QB, better leader. Rattler is a pretender. We mentioned this last week, but Rattler's going to have to transfer here. He's going to have to. We'll see if he's going to have to sit out a year and then come in. We'll see what everything happens with the portal. Tough spot for him.
Yeah, I think right now the clear answer is to transfer. Declaring for the draft, I think, would send a bad message for him to NFL teams, kind of saying like, oh, I'm just ready to move on. Whereas like there's still a lot for him left to prove. So maybe find some success at a team like Ole Miss, at a team like Oregon, Texas A&M, and you can really recover your draft stock. I don't know if he's going to be able to go #1 unless he just absolutely dominates at his next spot, but I do think that there is still plenty of ground that can easily be recovered if he puts together a strong performance in this next year. But right now, yeah, I think Caleb Williams is a clear answer for Oklahoma. He just seems to kind of have things worked out a little bit better. Maybe a better fit for Riley's offense. I don't know. Because we've seen Spencer Rattler succeed in this offense. It's just not working out this season. I don't know what the deal is. But I do think that Rattler still has enough natural talent that, if he lands in the right spot, we could see him just continue to kind of build back his stock and get some love next year in that 2023 NFL draft.
So, when it comes to quarterbacks who are kind of making an impact right now, we should give some credit to Stetson Bennett. Georgia wins again. Kentucky played him good. This is not a guy you really hear much about as far as any pro prospects. What do you think about his chances to potentially play at the next level? He started at Georgia. I think then he ended up in junior college, back to Georgia. So interesting journey so far for him.
Absolutely. As far as pro prospects, I don't see a lot for him. I think he's kind of low ceiling in terms of what he's going to be able to do, especially at the next level. But right now, he's doing a good job of stepping in for JT Daniels at the QB spot, being a game manager for this Georgia team. And that's really all they need. The defense is going to hold teams very well. They just need someone to kind of execute, get the ball to their playmakers, whether that's getting the ball to the running backs, getting it out quickly to their wide receivers. As far as projection, I don't think he has a lot in terms of NFL success, but I do think that for right now, what he's doing for Georgia can't be understated because there are teams, we look at Texas A&M when Zach Calzada first stepped in for the Aggies, things were falling apart because they couldn't get that QB play. But Stetson Bennett stayed ready, stayed prepared, and Georgia hasn't missed a beat at the quarterback position, and therefore they haven't missed a beat as a team.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the story when it comes to Georgia quarterbacks. If you look at the other ones who have been drafted, Murray, they're not, they're good leaders, but they're not next level players.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think JT Daniels is someone that's gotten some love in terms of the draft cycle, but even for him, I don't see a lot of upside when it comes to his tools. Obviously, coming off an injury last year, or not last year, but the year before last year. And, last year, maybe he was still struggling with that. But the durability concerns are always going to be there now with 2 seasons, with missing a lot of time. And then there's just this issue of, is he going to recover from that? Because he showed some decent tools as a true freshman at USC where he was passing the ball downfield. But now at Georgia, a lot of underthrown balls, a lot of lacking zip passes. So we'll see what happens. But right now, I think both Georgia QBs kind of not too much in terms of NFL prospect. And obviously, I can be wrong on that or they can grow. But at the moment, that's my evaluation.
Who really is like the top quarterback prospect right now? Because, I'm looking at the NFL. I think the Lions' strategy was let's lose, we'll get a high pick and take somebody. But, is there really the way to – I don't think any of these players right now being franchise changers. I don't even know. I couldn't tell you who's going to win the Heisman this year. And I don't know. Are these players really going to be that much better than Jared Goff over the next 4 or 5 years? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a risky quarterback class. The top guys right now are probably Matt Corral and Malik Willis. Matt Corral out of Ole Miss, Malik Willis out of Liberty. Both very different QBs. Matt Corral, obviously a little bit mobile, but has really dominated in terms of just layering passes, putting balls on different arm angles, being able to really kind of fit balls in tight windows with his excellent velocity and zip. Uh, Probably a little bit more refined than Willis, but I think he maybe doesn't offer the athletic upside. Malik Willis at QB, he is still very raw in terms of just overall passing ability, but he has tremendous arm talent. He has excellent mobility. It's a very basic comp. I'm not really trying to ride with it, but similar to Lamar Jackson, how he's just such a great runner that defenses almost have an impossible time trying to game plan for him. And Malik Willis is going to find success in similar ways early on in his career. As he develops as a passer, obviously that'll change. But I think right now the biggest thing that he can add as a quarterback is his running ability. But ultimately, there is so much questions surrounding this class. There's not really been this rising QB that's came out of nowhere. And I think that's what a lot of people have been banking on because it's been such a consistent trend. People are kind of forcing it a little bit, in my opinion. Kenny Pickett's been getting that hype. Jake Hayner out of Fresno State has been getting that hype. There's just guys that could potentially be decent mid-round options, but I don't see them as these franchise-changing quarterbacks. And so far, we really haven't found that answer of someone who's really risen up boards. And people are desperate to try to find someone, but ultimately, NFL teams aren't going to force it. If they don't feel a guy is their franchise quarterback, they're going to ride with a Jared Goff or a Jalen Hurts for another season rather than banking their tenure as a member of the staff just on a QB just because it's the top consensus option.
Yeah, I think I would, if I'm taking anybody, I'm probably going to go with Sam Howell just because we've seen what he can do when he actually has people around him. I have seen some people talking about Grayson McCall out of Coastal Carolina, but maybe that's a risky pick. But obviously he's had a great career there. But really, maybe it's time to start showing a guy Desmond Ridder some more love. Is it going to translate? It's kind of a interesting way they manage him right now. But again, what is he's won. And other than that, I think it's just a lot of you mentioned Pickett, so he's somebody from a major program. But other than that, it's a lot of guys from smaller programs here that are kind of in the mix at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been love for guys like Howell, guys like McCall, guys like Carson Strong out of Nevada, but there's still question marks surrounding them. Howell has had his stinkers of performances at UNC, obviously. Not a great supporting cast this season, so I'm not holding against him too much. I'm pretty impressed with what he's done, but there's still a lot of question marks surrounding this entire QB class. And, even guys like Matt Corral, who's considered the QB1, the big issue for him was when he threw an interception, it just became this downhill slope of play. He threw an interception against Tennessee, but then the game got delayed. He didn't really pass much after that. So, we're going to see some tests for him, but I want to see him throw an early pick and then bounce back and kind of throw some touchdowns as a response to that adversity, because I think that would answer some huge question marks that I have on him that we really haven't gotten an opportunity to see so far in his evaluation this season.
Certainly, and college football season, a little more than halfway through it here. Week 8 began last night, as you mentioned earlier. Coastal Carolina falls to Appalachian State. SMU, they beat Tulane big time. But there's some more games this weekend, Michael. So what players and games are you going to be paying the most attention to this weekend?
Yeah, there's some big games this weekend, and while maybe not the ranked versus ranked type of matchup, they're still definitely worth the watch. And one of those games is Oklahoma State versus Iowa State, really one that could ultimately come down to a game that decides who's going to be in that Big 12 championship. Oklahoma most likely going to be in there no matter what. Oklahoma State versus Iowa State, two teams that really have put together strong seasons so far. Iowa State kind of fallen off the mark a little bit due to some upset losses, but now they have this game against Oklahoma State. If they can win this one, they're back in the picture. Oklahoma State, obviously undefeated, trying to escape any issues. I think they're a little overrated right now. Texas really blew it last week. They haven't really opened up their passing game. A lot of this game comes down to how Jaylen Warren can fare as a runner. So really, that's going to be a player to watch for the Oklahoma State Cowboys is Jaylen Warren. Is he going to continue to find success on the ground to really help this offense put up points that are necessary to match up against this Iowa State offensive success? For Iowa State, keep an eye on Breece Hall, running back. This is going to be a ground and pound game for both sides. For some, that's not their cup of tea, but still a very crucial game to keep an eye on. Breece Hall has arguably the most upside in this running back class. I think him and Isaiah Spiller are kind of the consensus options for RB1, RB2. I'm more of a Breece Hall guy. And, even this season with the lack of offensive success for Iowa State, the lack of overall results in terms of record, he's still putting up 5.5 yards a carry with 10 touchdowns. He's been able to produce in the passing game, 21 receptions, 152 yards, has a touchdown on top of that as well. Still very much a star player for the Cyclones. And I think in this Oklahoma State game, we're going to see Iowa State pull off with the upset in what will be kind of shocking, but I think ultimately result in Iowa State being back in that picture for the Big 12. Another player to watch is Mike Rose, linebacker for Iowa State. Just all over the field for the Cyclones, 43 tackles, a sack, really good in coverage. He plays out in the slot at times, really can be all over the field. But in this game, it's going to be crucial that he slows down Jaylen Warren because Oklahoma State really gets their hands cut off whenever they lose that running game. And if they can slow down Warren, then Iowa State is definitely going to have this game in hand. The next game to keep an eye on is LSU versus Ole Miss. The Louisiana State Tigers, obviously moving on from Ed Orgeron, something that we'll talk about after this, but really just a crucial game for both sides. Orgeron's still going to be the head coach for this game, just going to finish out the season. But 4-3 versus a 5-1 Ole Miss team. Also big for Ole Miss. Player watch is Matt Corral. Last year against Ole Miss, he really struggled, and it resulted in just plenty of issues for the team because, you look at the game log for what happened last year. Ole Miss obviously lost LSU, but in that game, Matt Corral threw 5 interceptions. It was not a good performance, and, he kind of bounced back against Arkansas, didn't really throw that many turnovers this year, but this year he needs to bounce back against LSU, kind of show that strength and stride. And this is a great opportunity to do it against, Derek Stingley, Eli Ricks. There is phenomenal cornerback talent in this Tigers secondary. If Matt Corral can have a good game, then I think that would answer a lot of questions and really do well for his cementing of the QB1 position. At the wide receiver spot, Dontario Drummond is going to be in for a big game. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Derek Stingley, Eli Ricks. There's just dominant pieces in the secondary. He's going to have to find ways to get open, find success for his guy. If he can help Corral find success, get an open option, then Dontario Drummond is going to really get some love in that as well because he is a very talented receiver. He's kind of been Corral's go-to this year so far in the passing game, and it's absolutely crucial for both these guys to really get going in this game because I think it's going to be big for determining how their season is going to go. And the last player to watch is Damon Clark, a linebacker that has really been getting some love out of LSU, going to have a huge game in terms of keeping spies on Matt Corral, slowing down the running game, whether it's Jerry Neely, Snoop Connor, or Henry Parrish Jr. There are plenty of options all over this running back tandem. Damon Clark, though, leader of this defense, a defense that is very secondary heavy, very young at the pass rusher position, but in that linebacker spot, he needs to step up, kind of continue to play as well as he has. And LSU could potentially pull an upset if they're able to kind of keep this team hemmed in and really create some chaos for Matt Corral.
Well, I think they're going to play hard for Coach Orgeron here and try to win out. I don't think he was let go based on the field performance. I mean, the guy just won a national championship 2 years ago, so it's tough center there. I think there's some off the field stuff that may have been an issue. I wonder now, Michael, is he going to get back into coaching right away? Does USC finally bring him back after they let him go by mistake a few years ago, or is he going to be have to wait out a year? Does he maybe go into TV? And LSU is an attractive job. We'll see who comes in there to be the coach. We know that Peyton and Eli's nephew was being heavily recruited, and LSU was the favorite. Some were saying to potentially land him. Maybe that has a lot more to do with Coach O. So it's going to be an interesting situation to see where does Orgeron go and what LSU does moving forward.
Yeah, I think this job is definitely very presentable for a lot of teams. I think the past 3 head coaches have won a national championship during their time at LSU. So definitely an incredible opportunity for any coach that's looking for a new head coaching position. There are some really interesting candidates for this job. Joe Brady from the NFL is definitely going to be linked to it. I think Billy Napier out of Louisiana, formerly Louisiana Lafayette, is someone that is going to get a lot of love. Dave Miranda out of Baylor was their defense coordinator when they won that championship. I think he could very easily come over to LSU, especially after the great play by Baylor so far this season. And then there's just some other options around the league that really could find their way into the discussion. One guy that I really like is sorry, I'm blanking on it. Just overall, I think Luke Fickell out of Cincinnati. That's another one that's just been a common name that's been thrown around in all these circles, and he's kind of waiting. He stayed at Cincinnati, kind of looking for the right job to take, and I think LSU could very easily present that. There's been talk about Brent Venables. He's kind of been in that same mindset. The Clemson defensive coordinator, it's been a major thing that he doesn't want to leave until he knows that the job he's getting is the right job, and maybe at LSU is the one that kind of steers him to actually make that move. And another one that I think is potentially an option, but it would be tough to necessarily kind of jump ship in conferences. Mark Stoops out of Kentucky. Just a very great job at Kentucky so far. Has had some tremendous seasons, even when things hit the fan. When Terry Wilson was out for the season, they played Lynn Bowden at a wide receiver at QB, and they were still able to make the bowl game. So he's done a great job at Kentucky, and I think LSU would be very lucky to have him. But I don't know if he would want to necessarily jump from Kentucky to LSU just because it's a little disrespectful, jumping in conference. But we'll see. I think this is definitely a bigger program than Kentucky, and I think this is definitely a huge job that a lot of coaches are going to at least hear out and take a phone call on.
I think they should pursue Chris Peterson, who is retired, and I think Bob Stoops will pursue this role. I think Stoops wants to get back into coaching. We saw him coach with the XFL. So there's no doubt in my mind that if given the opportunity, Stoops is going to be looking to get back into college football, but he's only going to do it with a Power 5 team.
Yeah, and that certainly makes sense just on both sides. I think there's plenty of reason that, if you can get into a big opportunity like this, it's hard to turn down. And, we could very easily see a potential Urban Meyer situation here. Who knows? I mean, his NFL future isn't necessarily locked in just yet, so we could very easily see that happen where we're looking at Urban Meyer, end the season, they mutually agree to part ways or whatever, and then LSU has their head coach.
I think what you said about Joe Brady is interesting because it's going to be a scenario of like, would he take a college football job? If he would, I think it would be this one. Or is he going to wait it out to get an NFL interview? Because, it's pretty obvious that he's probably going to get some interviews this offseason for an NFL coaching job. But, you got to figure Oregon's already cranking away here trying to fill this vacancy as quickly as possible because of recruiting.
USC. I think it's going to be super interesting. And, Brady is definitely going to kind of have to decide. Like, they aren't going to bring him in if he's just trying to quickly head out and go to the NFL. So you're looking at Joe Brady and you're saying, look, we'll hire you, but we need to get your commitment. We need to know that you're going to be here for 5 years, not one, or we need to know you'll be here for your career and not trying to dip to the NFL the first opportunity that happens. So it's going to be quite interesting. And in that regard, I think Bill O'Brien could potentially get some interest as well. We've seen that happen consistently where these Alabama assistants kind of get those call-ups, and maybe that's what happens here for LSU. But a lot of options. A lot of people are going to be expressing interest in LSU, and in turn, I think there's going to be a lot of great candidates that come out, and we'll see who the ultimate one that is lucky enough to win that job.
Yeah, and I think Matt Campbell will continue to be a hot name both in the pros and the college level.
Absolutely. I think even with this slower start for Iowa State compared to expectations, there is still so much promise in Matt Campbell, and I think he'll finish out the year strong enough to where people are very much still in on him as far as prospects go.
Yeah, everyone's looking for their next, Sean McVay. And look, it's working out pretty well right now for the Cardinals with Cliff Kingsbury.
Absolutely. And, he maybe doesn't offer this offensive attack, but he is so phenomenally gifted at building this culture. Iowa State is probably one of the best cultures around college football, and it's just never shut up about. And I don't blame anyone about that. It's just they continuously talk about how well he's built this culture there, just everything that goes into it, and absolute respect to this organization, I guess, program. And we've seen just tremendous respect given around from Matt Campbell and just tremendous words only spoken about him.
No doubt about it. All right, on to the Chip Kelly game here, the last game you highlighted here.
Yeah, last game of the week to keep an eye on is Oregon versus UCLA. This is going to be a tremendous game, and like Nick just mentioned, Chip Kelly, sort of a revenge game. UCLA has been playing pretty well this season. Just beat Washington last week in what was considered an upset, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them pull this upset here. Oregon, I think, has some shakiness on their offense, and if you can kind of match their defense in terms of chaos, then you could potentially create some success in this game. And players to watch in this one, Zach Charbonnet is obviously the star of this UCLA offense in terms of just being the key to the running game. He's going to have a big performance because Oregon's defense is not going to let up or make this easy. Sean Ryan, the offensive tackle for UCLA, is in for a big game. Him and Alec Anderson are going to be going against Kayvon Thibodeau. He'll probably be moving around, but both tackles need to have a great game. Both could very easily help their stock with a good performance against Thibodeau. Maybe one of those games where, if you blank them, you're going to start getting attention, you're going to start getting love, and then you could potentially be in those first-round conversations very easily. And then the last player to watch is Vernon McKinley, the safety out of Oregon, just a tremendous player. We talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. We talk about Noah Sewell. But Vernon McKinley is one of the more underrated players in this defense, and he's going to be huge at, just trying to take away Greg Dulcich, trying to take away the top passing by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, coming down into the box and helping tackle Charbonnet, helping tackle Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's going to have his hands full all game. And, if he steps up to the plate and meets those expectations, McKinley's going to be a guy that gets a lot of love in this already stacked safety class. And he could very easily be one of the guys at the top of the list. That is all for the college football preview. There are plenty of games you can keep an eye on this week, but those are the ones that we have decided to highlight. Some other games that I think are important. I think this Wake Forest versus Army game is going to be one that's pretty highly touted. Army has definitely put together a very strong season so far. You can also keep an eye on Wisconsin versus Purdue. Going to be a good one there. Clemson versus Pittsburgh is going to be an absolutely crucial game as far as conference goes. And then San Diego State versus Air Force is going to be a really good game. 6-0 San Diego State versus 6-1 Air Force. Obviously, a tremendous matchup there, just record-wise and everything. Both teams putting together a very strong season. And then Notre Dame versus USC has to be one that people are going to be keeping an eye on. The night game that week, big rivalry. Can Notre Dame continue on and go 7-1, or will USC get some revenge and get up above 500 in the season? Should be a big one. Very excited to keep an eye on, and really a fun week of college football ahead.
Yeah, one last game would be Liberty going to North Texas to take on your Mean Green. Your Mean Green going to the AAC. Pretty big step up for them, I think.
Yeah, I was thrilled to hear it. Just absolutely big for all those teams that were moving from the Conference USA. Conference USA, though, is sitting in bubbling water right now, almost a boiling point. It seems like the Big 12 survived, the American Athletic Conference survived, and now Conference USA losing their teams. Everyone either heading to the American Athletic Conference or to the Sun Belt, and now Conference USA has, I believe, 4 teams left, and it's UTEP, Louisiana Tech. I can't even think of the other ones. Western Kentucky is one of them, and I believe the last one is Middle Tennessee State. Oh, and Florida International. So some solid programs that really are now kind of left looking for a home. So really interesting situation, and it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens because there's some chaos still left. I would think UTEP maybe goes and joins the Mountain West Conference. A lot of these programs maybe have to go independent for a little bit until they find a home, but we'll see what happens. Ultimately, I think there's still a lot of moves left in college football.
Yeah, I want to see what happens with Liberty and specifically Hugh Freeze. He was chomping at the bit to get a big job again, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with him.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot left for Hugh Freeze in terms of college football, and I think we could see some big performances this week.
Absolutely. All right, to the NFL now. Last week, we got a lot of things, we expected. Something I did not see coming was the Ravens blowing out the Chargers. I was stunned that the Ravens defense was able to hold the Chargers to only 6 points. Really, maybe the most shocking win of the season so far.
Yeah, I think that was huge for the Ravens to kind of build some confidence. I thought the Chargers were going to win that one. I thought they had all the momentum heading in, whereas the Ravens had kind of won some big games, but they hadn't really put their foot down in terms of beating teams that were necessarily in their competition level. So I thought, Chargers are going to take that one. But no, Ravens dominated, even more so last week. There were some big games for some major just telling marks. Buffalo obviously lost to the Titans, which I think was big for the Titans. Not necessarily a knock on Buffalo. I still think they're probably the favorite in the AFC, but huge for the Titans to kind of get back in that picture. That New York Jets loss now very much in the rearview mirror, and they're going to be talked about just as a team that can contend in the AFC. Derrick Henry, just an absolute beast of a running back, and has really kind of created some interest in this AFC picture.
And we'll look ahead in a few minutes, but Chiefs Titans this week. It's gonna be a good one for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at the forecast and it was talking about there's probably going to be some rain. And, if it's a rainy day and both teams are kind of keeping the ball on the ground, that makes the Titans the clear favorite in my eyes.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens. It might just be a wet day. It might be one of those things where it rains early and then it stops. But keep an eye on that weather there because Tennessee, the Chiefs just aren't looking like they should. And that's going to create some issues. And if Tennessee can go in there and really create some chaos, then it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the Chiefs going forward.
No doubt about it. All right, so a few more things we'll look back on from the past weekend. Aaron Rodgers does what he always does. He owns the Bears. I was very surprised the Raiders won, that they'd be in a tough spot. The Steelers, they win, but they're not a good team this year. You're barely beating Geno Smith, and you got to go to overtime. Not ideal. Joe Burrow continues to impress with Jamar Chase. Jaguars got their first win, which I figured would be the case against the Dolphins in London. The question now is, do the Dolphins actually pull the trigger and trade for Deshaun Watson? And at that point, is he allowed to play? So that's a make-or-break move for the GM there in Miami. If he makes that trade and he can't play, he's going to be fired at the end of the season. And things are looking tough for Flores at this point as well. Sam Darnold did not look good. Vikings get the win. Another overtime game. Kirk Cousins looked really good. Very impressed by Kirk this season. He's playing very, very well. Two games I do want to talk about. First, we'll talk about your Patriots, who they should have beat the Cowboys. I'm not happy about that conclusion there, but the Cowboys win again, and they're going to just continue to blow through the NFC East here. So they might get a very high seed in the playoffs, but I don't know. I don't buy these Cowboys as real credible contenders for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys have enough to potentially get there, but I do think the Patriots should have won that one. Patriots are a very weird team this year. They're going to be in most games, but they aren't necessarily winning these games, finishing the ones that they should. And you look at that first game against the Dolphins, now looking at this 1-5 team, it's just games where you're kind of like, why are they getting blown out with the Saints, but keeping the Bucs and the Cowboys within one possession? Why are they, losing to the Dolphins, but keeping these contenders just super close? So it's a weird situation, and I feel like that's kind of been the mantra of Patriots so far these past 2 seasons, and I think it's going to continue this year. It'll probably be a close game against the Jets, and everyone's saying why. And then they go and compete really closely with the Chargers, and everyone's saying that makes no sense. But it's just what's going to happen for the Patriots. I do like what I've seen on Mac. Obviously, that pick six to kind of change the tide of the game was not great, but it was still a good performance. They're developing the deep ball a little bit. I think including some more deep passes, getting the offense a little bit more opened up will be huge just overall for this Patriots team. And, it's definitely a year where you're kind of saying, okay, let's just look competitive. Hopefully next year we're in playoffs. But it is something that can be frustrating while you're in that process because you obviously want to see your team win every game that they're in.
Yeah, no, I understand the frustration there, no doubt about it. All right, last game to talk about is another statement victory here by the best team in the National Football League, as the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, 4 more touchdowns, definitely one of the favorites for MVP at this point. And listen, I think the Cardinals, people need to start believing them. Stop saying, oh, well, they should have lost this game, or oh, they got lucky here. Like J.J. Watt said, maybe they're just better than the opponent. So kudos to the Cardinals, and they're going to continue rolling at this point, Michael. I don't see them losing, too many games here. They're definitely going to be playoff bound. They're not going to collapse that badly that they'll miss the playoffs.
Yeah, and they play the Texans this week. Should be fairly manageable. I mean, not going to say that chaos can't happen because it's the NFL, but most likely they win this one. And it's really setting up for a great Thursday night football game against the Green Bay Packers this coming Thursday, and I'm really excited to see that one. But, they got to handle their business, both teams, this Sunday, and we'll see what happens. But Arizona looking very strong right now, especially in a division where San Francisco is kind of falling apart with injuries, still has to get Trey Lance up to speed. Russell Wilson injured, probably going to keep Seattle at least limited in where they can be in the NFC West. Probably at most kind of get that last spot in that playoff picture, and that's if Russell Wilson comes back quickly and really just kind of goes on a tear. So they're kind of looking at what was going to be a very strong division. Now they've kind of cemented themselves as most likely a top 2 team unless everything just falls apart at the seams and we see just.
If Kyler Murray gets injured,
if Kyler goes down and then everyone else just kind of stalls in production, then we could see them fall out. But right now, assuming all things stay healthy, we should see this Arizona team as at least a top 2 team in that NFC West and probably top 3 record wise in the NFC.
Yeah, I think Garoppolo is going to be back this week, so that'll definitely help the 49ers because I don't think Trey Lance is gonna get them to the playoffs this season. I think they need to go with Garoppolo. So we'll see what happens there. And then last night, Thursday Night Football, the Browns with the big bounce back win, which they needed to keep pace in the division. And Case Keenum, does what he does. He won the game, which he does often. And the Broncos played them tight. But we expected the Browns to win, but you don't necessarily expect them to win when they're missing like 4 or 5 of their starters on offense, but they still got the win there.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge win for the Browns. I don't know if Fangio is going to be the head coach next year for Denver. This was a win that I feel like they kind of had to have, and they lost it. Teddy Bridgewater kind of fallen off a little bit. Drew Lock hasn't really had a chance to get in, but when he did, he didn't look good. I know that the QB position was a well-known question mark, and that's not necessarily on Fangio, but I think these are games where you're looking at it and you're saying, look, we need to get some production. So I wouldn't be surprised if a game like this kind of spells hot seat for Fangio and we kind of look at the future where Broncos are looking for a head coach this offseason. At the very least, I think they need to start looking for an offensive coordinator. At the very least, they need a QB. But
Shermer is not a good coordinator.
Yeah, I think this is going to be very interesting to see how the Broncos bounce back from this. Because while the Browns, it's just a running back that was their big piece out. I know Baker Mayfield being out, Case Keenum's not a terrible fill-in, but that's still a game where if you say, look, their QB and their star running back is out, you're expected to win, and the Broncos couldn't get that done. Things don't necessarily get easier. They play Washington next week, which should be one that they can bounce in. But games against the Cowboys, games against the Chargers, Chiefs, Bengals, Raiders. This is a tough division. And if you're sitting here at the end of the season looking 5-12, 6-11 with all the talent on this roster, you kind of have to say, look, this isn't good enough for me. And especially in a game where, this has been such a defensive-minded team. Fangio is such a defensive-minded guy, but Dearness Johnson was running all over him. We could see some doubters for sure, and I think I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos do end up looking for a new head coach this offseason.
Definitely a possibility. And, we mentioned it before, it's a tough draft to draft quarterback, so we'll see what happens there. All right, Michael, it's time for you to tell everybody your notable rookies from last weekend. Rochman's Rookies of the Week.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't get the graphic put together on time, so I apologize for that. But there are still some phenomenal rookies from this past weekend of play. And, first and foremost, you got to give it to the golden-armed QB, the golden-haired QB, Trevor Lawrence, getting the Jaguars their first win.
His first time on the list.
Absolutely. 25-41, not necessarily the most dominant performance, but 319 yards, a touchdown, getting the Jaguars their first win in a game that really I thought the Dolphins were going to win it. And just a big game for Trevor Lawrence, a huge performance, and just absolutely phenomenal for him. So great job, Trevor Lawrence. First time on the list, something that we probably didn't expect it to take this long, but maybe we'll start seeing your name some more. The next guy on this list played in that same game, Jalen Waddle, 10 receptions, 70 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Being able to contribute at that large of a level is just huge for the Dolphins offense. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa back in this offense, and I think that's going to be huge for Waddle to kind of get going. And, if this offense is going to open up, whether it's with Tua or with Deshaun Watson, we'll see. But I think Jalen Waddle needs a QB that's going to get him the ball because he is an absolute playmaker, and it's something that I think he could very easily elevate this offensive play if they do target him enough. Next player that made this list is Khalil Herbert. 19 rushes, 97 yards, and a touchdown, 2 receptions for 15 yards on top of that. Just an absolutely great performance for Herbert. Really established himself as one of the top rookie running backs in this class already. And, just really creating some interesting situations. I believe he's had 37 carries so far during the season, and not a single one has went down behind the line of scrimmage, which, you can say, oh, that's good blocking, but that's not just good blocking. That's great running on his end. Definitely a very productive back and someone that I think is going to create some chaos for that Bears front office to decide, are we just going to have this dual-headed backfield, or are we going to let David Montgomery walk whenever his contract expires? It'll be interesting to see, but David Montgomery, obviously phenomenal back, is going to get his chances to kind of get back into that running back backfield, but maybe more of a split role now with how well Khalil Herbert has played. Next player that makes this list is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. In the game against the Cardinals, he was able to put together a very strong performance, 8 tackles, pass deflection. Really, this is someone that has been extremely interesting all season, just his versatility all over the field, someone that's been able to really contribute in a multitude of roles. He can drop into the slot and cover. He can do zone out of the linebacker spot. And he's really just been able to make plays left and right. Just an absolutely phenomenal performance, and someone that I think as the season goes on, as we continue to kind of get the attention on him, we're just going to continue to see dominant play out of him. For me personally, I was someone that I love the bigger linebackers. So whenever I was watching Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I was like, all right, he's smaller, so I got to kind of take that into consideration, but we'll see. And I turned it on, and I was in love with him. I was like, man, this guy is special. And even as like a hybrid player, he just offered so much. And I think he's continued to show that. And we're looking at someone who's going to be a mainstay for this Browns defense, just even as early as this week. And then the last player that I am giving it to is the linebacker edge type player out of Detroit, Derek Barnes. Another great performance, 9 tackles, 1 pass deflection, has really stepped up well for this team. In a defense that's not very good, Derek Barnes has actually kind of made a nice season for himself. They really let go of Jamie Collins because of Derek Barnes. They thought he was talented enough to kind of fill in and be the future of this team on defense. The Lions have plenty of issues on defense. They gave up 34 points to the Bengals. They weren't really getting a lot of success, but Derek Barnes had a very good, strong performance. A hybrid type edge linebacker out of Purdue. I was actually pretty low on him. I'm looking like an idiot for that one, but he put together a very strong week, and someone that I think as the season goes on, as his career goes on, could very well be one of those safe starting defensive players that kind of sticks around the league for 10, 15 years.
Certainly. All right, a few games that are notable for this weekend. Jared Goff heading back to LA to take on the Rams. I think Goff will have a really good game, but the Rams are going to win that one. But that's really the only reason that's notable. Feel bad for Goff. He's in a bad situation. Jets Patriots, always fun to watch those. I think the Patriots will do what they did earlier this season and just destroy the Jets. So maybe you disagree, but I think that's what we're looking at. And then the other two games that are really intriguing, maybe touched on it earlier, Chiefs Titans. I think the Titans are going to win this one, and at that point, what you got to start wondering, when are the Chiefs going to be hitting the panic button? Because if they lose, they're going to 3-4. Tough division there. The Chargers blew it last week by losing, but it's not going to be easy to win that division with them. And the Raiders are still, they're still in the mix. They're 4-2, so right now they're in first place. And the last game that is very intriguing is a big AFC North matchup for first place, and that is Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals going to Baltimore to take on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I don't know. I just keep doubting these Ravens. I don't know why, but I'd like to see the Bengals win this game. I'm not sure if they're going to do it because I think the Chargers are a better team than the Bengals, but this should definitely be a really, really fun matchup.
Yeah, two very hot teams in terms of NFL play. Bengals only on a one-game win streak technically, but they really played the Packers close. They were able to beat the Steelers, able to beat the Jaguars. I think the Ravens take this one, but I do think that the Bengals keep it close, kind of build that momentum going into that next stream of games where they're playing teams like the Jets. And then, it's a big matchup against the Browns where they can kind of establish themselves as that number 2 team in the AFC North. Really just crucial 2 games out of these next 3 with the Ravens and the Browns. And I think if the Bengals can win one of them, then they're definitely looking at potentially making playoffs. But ultimately, still a lot left to prove, and I think it starts this Sunday against the Ravens.
Yeah, and we also at this time of the season could start looking towards the top 10 picks. And, if the Jets could pull this one off, the Patriots could be looking at a top 10 pick. But the Dolphins are 1-5, the Jets are 1-4. You have the Texans at 1-5, the Jaguars at 1-5, the Giants at 1-5, Seahawks and 49ers each have only 2 wins. The Lions are 0-6, they're other class, and the Falcons at 2-3.
Yeah, not a great week. We'll get some. Not a great slate of some of those teams, but we'll get some draft determiners, looking at this Dolphins-Falcons game. Probably the loser of that one's going to be picking top 5. You look around at maybe Panthers-Giants. One of these teams could very easily start falling if they lose this one, especially the Giants. And then there's teams like the Colts and 49ers, both teams that kind of had playoff aspirations heading into the season. They lose this one, that's going to spell some trouble for them. That put the Colts at 2-5, 49ers at 2-4. Not a great start for either team compared to what they were wanting, but definitely a big game because, Wentz and the Colts are definitely trying to get back in that playoff picture while the 49ers are trying to kind of get the Trey Lance era going, and this is a decent opportunity to do so against the Colts team that's definitely beatable.
Yeah, and, when it comes to bad divisions, it's crazy. The Cowboys and the Titans already locked up the divisions 6 weeks into the season. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there could be some craziness that happens, but most likely those teams are in the right spot to kind of take away this win and go for the playoffs. That's why. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's why I have a feeling that next week when the Cowboys come back from their bye, I think they're going to lose to the Vikings because the Vikings just kind of need it more.
Well, I was just going to say I think the Vikings are looking at they're looking at like a playoff team. I think at this point, with the way everything else is breaking in the NFC with the West, and if they can win this weekend, and next week's another big game. I like what I'm seeing from the Vikings. I don't like what I'm seeing out of the Panthers. Without Christian McCaffrey, this team is just a mess, and I think a lot of that's Sam Darnold.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Vikings, they're on bye right now, but they need to take every second of this bye week because they have a tough stretch coming up. They go Cowboys, Ravens, Chargers, Packers. Then they get, a little bit of a down period, 49ers, Lions, Steelers. Then they play Bears, Rams, Packers, Bears. So not the easiest of end the season schedules, but if they can, utilize this bye week, pull some upsets against like teams like the Cowboys and stuff, then I think we're looking at a playoff team. I think the talent's absolutely there, and I think there's a little bit of hot seat on Zimmer if they are going to miss the playoffs again. So I think maybe that pressure combined with just this overall talent could push them into that playoff picture.
Yep, and we are 1 month from now. We'll be on the show. We'll be talking about the big Thanksgiving games. Raiders Cowboys is a big game. Bills Saints not a big game. Bears Lions not really a big game, but we got one good game there. And we'll see. I don't think the Lions are going to go winless this year, but they're trying their best. Sometimes it looks like.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it, and just a heads up to all viewers that are probably wondering. I'm getting a desk soon. I got a cardboard box as my desk, and it's filled right now. So I'm sitting at like an angle to my computer. Eventually, I'll be straight on with a better desk setup, but right now, still getting everything moved into my apartment. So just apologies for that. But we want to thank everyone in the comment section who was able to contribute today. We want to thank everyone who was able to view this. Thanks to LandryFootball.com for the opportunity to stream off of this platform and really get to talk football. And, we'll see you guys next Monday, but we're really looking forward to it. Take care and have a great weekend.